Welcome to the Gospel According to podcast, the first and only podcast looking at the intersection of pop culture and the Christian faith. I'm your host, Dave Hallahan, and I'm joined, as always, by the assistant to the host. That's Dan Ulrich.
It's assistant host.
Well, assistant to.
No, it's assistant host.
Jess dressed up as Jim, dressed up as Dwight. It's
Yep.
Dan Ulrich. Yes.
I went to the thrift shop and I found this shirt and bought the glasses, and it only cost me $5 to complete the outfit.
Very nice, very nice. And we're not alone. Also dressed up as Michael Scott. No, we're not alone. We have a very special guest, and you may know him as Baldy. Your head is bald. It is hairless. It is shiny. It is reflective like a mirror. M. His name is Mark.
Is that right? Yes, but it's also highly offensive.
His name is not Mark. Actually, it could be Mark. I don't know. But we are here with the creator and runner of @Office Theology on Instagram, the first and only Instagram account looking at the intersection of the office and theology.
There you go.
And so as trendsetters, we had to have him on the podcast, obviously. But he runs it anonymously. But for sake of that joke, we will be referring to him as Mark going forward. But how are you doing today, Mark?
I am doing well. It is a beautiful day. It's a good day chatting on a podcast about two things I love, the Bible and The Office.
Yes. Doesn't get much better, I don't think. As much as you're willing to divulge, who are you? Do you have the credentials to run an Office Theology meme page?
It's funny that you asked that question because kind of how quick this Instagram blew up. I felt like anybody can run anything on social media, and based upon how big their following is, it automatically, people assume that there's someone worth listening to. Right, and so it's interesting that you asked that. But so kind of some of my backstory, I was raised super strict Mormon, which I'm not Mormon anymore. Let's just clarify that real quick before people turn this off.
Oh, actually, that's why we had you on. So I'm going to kick you off.
Okay.
This
is an LDS
we thought you
podcast.
were Mormon. Yeah.
And then I was absolutely nothing, basically all through high school, different stuff like that. And I didn't start following Jesus until after high school. I was the first Christian in my family. And I'm talking like not nominal Mormon, like special underwear and everything Mormon. Like the garments, we were sealed in the temple to be able to be at our own planet. So that would be dope later in life or afterlife. Yeah. Baptized when I was 8, all those different things. So that kind of stirred the pot a little bit in my family. It's still kind of like a weird interactions nowadays because a lot of my, not immediate family, but let's say like aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, they're all pretty high up in the Mormon church around where I live too. But I am your typical mid-30s white guy that loves The Office. Let's just get that out there. Been pastoring for 14 years now. I was a youth pastor for a really long time. And now currently I'm a groups pastor now. And then my wife and I are actually planting a church in the next 12 to 18 months. Okay. So super pumped about that. I really like learning and I really enjoy tough conversations, which we'll get to a little bit later. I think The Office meme page is the open doorway to have some of those really hard conversations with people on social media that maybe wouldn't have talked to me any other way if they know who I am or different stuff like that. Yep.
I think you could have, when I asked, like, did you have the credentials? You could have just started with and ended with, I'm a mid-30s white guy. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
We got 3 of us on the podcast, all youth pastors, and you either start a meme page, a podcast, or both. And
or you start smoking meats.
Or you start smoking meat. Yes.
I haven't gotten to smoking meats, but I just watched Barbecue Showdown on Netflix, and I told my wife, I'm like, I think I'm ready to make that a personality.
Yes. Yeah. We're about like 5 to 10 years away from getting really into World War II as well.
Yes. Well, I might be there a little sooner. There's this account on Instagram called World War II, a now and then is what it's called. So they go to these big World War II spots, show it now, and they hold up a photo of what it looked like mid World War II.
Wow. Yeah, that is
so
pretty good.
So that's like, I'm in it about 5 months now, so I'm a little ahead of you guys on that one.
Yeah. So, what led to the Office Theology as a meme page? I mean, you say that it is an open door for hard conversations, but did you start out with that as the intent, or have you kind of landed there afterwards?
I didn't start there, that's for sure. I think that I've seen The Office so many times. I was in high school when it was on TV, and I actually had to wait a week to watch the new episodes. That's miserable sounding now. To the point of like, I could hear a quote from The Office and most of the time know what season, episode, and I could continue in the dialogue. Like, it's something that I just watched a ton. I really thought was funny. And then later on, I became a Christian around 18 years old, still watching The Office a ton. And then after how many years is that? 16 years or so of being a Christian and studying God's word faithfully. I'm like watching The Office. I'm like, that reminds me of this passage. Or I read a passage. I'm like, that reminds me of this part in The Office. And I'm like, hold on. Like, I wonder if there's an Office like Bible Instagram account. I found a few that looked like they had some attempts, but they're pretty stagnant. There wasn't a lot of posting. And I'm like, yes, a whole Isaiah 6 moment. Here I am, Lord, send me. I will do this. So I just started making them, actually, honestly, because I thought it was really, really fun to take these scenes and clips and tie them to scripture. But yeah, that was in November 2022. So a little less than a year ago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You've blown up for sure.
Yeah, running a meme page kind of destroys in some ways consuming media or anything, because it's always just like, oh, is that clip is something like makes you think of it. Like, we run youth group memes, so it's always like, okay, how does this relate to something, instead of just mindlessly scrolling in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah, social media in general does that, right? Because you tend to think then in like in the short snippet, like, oh, this in a conversation with my wife, I'm like, oh, this is like a funny anecdote I can share online, or like my kid does something funny, and I'm like, oh, I need 500 Facebook friends to share this story with or whatever. But then it really zooms in when you have a meme page.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, even the whole sense of it when you're IRL, around people, that it's like, how do you want to like share a video in the middle of your conversation, but it can't naturally happen very well, where you're like, oh, this reminds me of this video, or this oh, this is funny. Or before we started recording, we're all like, oh, this is like that meme, and then explaining the picture meme to each other, where it
has
breaks
become
down
a form of
point.
communication now.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and it's like a discipline now to like not have it dominate my thoughts when I'm like watching The Office or doing this or thinking of that. Like, I have a note on my phone that just says Office meme ideas. So I like go there, put it in there, and just close it. Like, because if I don't do that, then I'm just thinking about it, hoping I don't forget about it later.
Right.
And so,
that's like writing a sermon too. Is like, I'll be in the shower, or I'll be falling asleep at night, and I'll be like, oh, this will be a great illustration for this sermon. You'd be like, this is so good, I'm definitely not going to forget what it is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Or I'll be at the pulpit and be like, I remember trying to remember to not forget this, but I don't remember what the illustration was. Just the fact that
you guys are so inspired. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So what has been the most surprising thing? I mean, you're at what, 40,000+? Are you at 50? You're in between there, right?
Yeah, it's like 44 something.
In a short amount of time, for sure. So what has been the most surprising thing about running this meme page for you?
People are a lot nicer if they don't know where you land theologically, politically. Because I think when people have ambiguity around social media accounts, they typically assume you're more aligned than you actually might be. It's kind of like what I'm thinking, because they'll pick up on certain posts or different things. If it's roasting Pentecostals, they'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's a Reformed dude. Like, yeah, he's one of my guys. But then I just dropped one today roasting Calvinists, and all of a sudden, maybe the Pentecostal like, oh, maybe he is more Pentecostal. You know what I mean? So I think what's surprising is people are a lot nicer if they don't know those certain things, because a lot of people have certain preconceived notions of different theological stances or political stances that I think play into how they treat people, whether they know it or not. Also, the most aggressive ones are Baptists and Catholics. I think they get the most wild. And then I did a hot take. If you don't know what that is, if you're listening, seen this, I post topics that are typically a high tension conversation, but I posted one about hell, the doctrine of hell. And always thought Christian Universalist was an oxymoron. I didn't know you could try to claim that. But Christian Universalists are straight up mean.
Oh no.
Are straight up mean. And several people, I mean, I'm not really a person to debate with people. I'll ask them a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But I'll admit there was one Christian Universalist that was just annoying me as all get out, and I couldn't let it go. And he goes, I wrote a book on this. I'm like, you can write a book about wrong stuff.
But they can't tell you to go to hell, I guess.
Yeah. I'll see you in heaven. Yeah. The last thing that was shocking, which actually led to me doing hot takes, is a decent amount of people aren't sure biblically why they believe what they do. They've been told it. They've watched things about it. But when I ask the question, they'll respond to me their view, say on what was the last one I did, the purpose of church gatherings. Someone sent me their whole vision cast from their lead pastor, and I said, where is that biblically? And they didn't know. That's where I'd say my focus on office theology started shifting, when I'm like, I had this captivated audience through the office. Let's find out why people believe what they do, and how solid are they in those beliefs. But I want to handle that gently, though, because people build their life off of these beliefs. And so what I don't want to do is just come in and torpedo it, but I want to ask good questions to help them figure out why they believe what they believe. And if they can't find it, then go find it. But not in the sense of proof texting, but in the sense of context of what that passage is about.
Yeah. And that might be surprising to anyone who doesn't run a meme page to hear all of those things, because it is it's funny how it becomes a vehicle for substantive conversation when you're just watching The Office and oh, that reminds me of this Bible story. I'm going to share that with the internet. And then you end up having these real conversations. I do think it's a way or an evidence of how I think humor can break down walls for people.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be exposing even of things. And yeah, I've seen that for sure. And you are doing, it's not a podcast, it's a meme page, but it is doing what we do with the podcast of taking something from pop culture, intersecting it with faith. And I think that's a good on-ramp for people. Dan, dressed as Jim, dressed as Dwight. What was your introduction to The Office? Did you watch it as it first aired?
Towards the end of it, definitely in college, there would be watch parties in the lounges and stuff. Didn't watch it initially when it came out, but then kind of got up to speed where we were watching. My wife, before she was my wife, we would watch episodes as they were coming out week by week, and together with friends or stuff like that. And then as married couple, we've probably watched through it 3 times together since then. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I was a little bit later to the party. I do think there was some in college where I think college is when I got into it. So I think it aired 2005, I think is when it started. I went away to college in 2007. So I don't think it was right away, but I was a couple seasons behind. But same thing, we would watch together in college in the dorm or in the gathering spaces there. And then I kind of backfilled it. And then I was also, I was a big DVD and CD. Not that CDs have anything to do with The Office. I was a big disc guy, I guess. And so DVDs, I would buy them all the time. And so I had the seasons of The Office on DVD as well. So definitely got into it a little bit later, but I dove in.
It's funny how it becoming this Netflix show and a show that you can kind of always have on in the background is where it's even grown since its has been off air and in the later seasons, and how I think the rewatches and the falling in love with the characters and the nuances of it makes you like it even more. I remember my dad, when he first started, watched a couple episodes as it was, just appearing on, reruns on television, and he would pick it up here and there, and he was like, "This is the dumbest thing ever. Like, I do not
Hmm.
get this humor. It doesn't." But now, like, I guess since it was on enough that he would watch through it, now he like loves it. Now we talk about it with each other, and my mom's like, "I don't get it. This is the dumbest thing ever." But just kind of that growth of it being this background show of you can put it on if you've seen, even if you haven't seen all of it, but it can kind of be one of those shows that can just be a background show for you as you're doing other things in the house, and has grown in that with the memes and the clips and the lore of it in that way.
So, Mark, you were going to answer, and maybe I was
Hmm.
wrong, but did you watch it as it aired? I did hear you say that, right, or no?
Yeah, so I probably started watching it roughly around the end of season 2.
Okay.
And so I was a big DVD guy. I think I still have them because I'm like, I'm not getting rid of these. These are like antiques now. But I backtracked. I bought like first season, second season, and then as they came out, bought them in DVDs. Now I bought it on iTunes, so I have it on my phone always.
There you go. But
Yep,
during the zombie apocalypse, when the internet doesn't work, you have the DVDs, so
that's right. That's
you'll
right.
be
Yeah, and I've probably seen it. I was thinking about it. I probably like not exaggerating, seen it through 18 to 20 times, if not
that's a lot.
maybe. And like I feel like I'm trying to count conservatively and not want to be like Mr. like
Right,
Pastor
right.
Math and overshoot.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I just always had it on and always watched it and always found it really funny. And so
Yeah. We're gonna focus in on Michael Scott in a moment, but I'll start with asking you, like as you say you watched it through almost dozens of times.
yeah.
You stick it out past the Michael seasons then.
Yeah, oh yeah. Season 7, episode 22, Goodbye Michael. There is much beyond. And so this is where I think maybe I'm in the minority on this. Like I think D'Angelo's funny, Will Ferrell. I
Yeah.
think he has a good part to play. I like Robert California. He's like the creepy funny guy. Like Pete and Plop are hilarious. Jim and Dwight Jr. So I think there's lots of gold. I'll say it's few and far between comparatively, but I
Right.
think there's lots of really, really funny,
Yeah,
good stuff in those later
my last
seasons.
rewatch, I felt the same way. Where you kind of have this, Michael's gone, the show kind of drops off. It's like
Yeah.
trying to find its footing with Andy as boss and other
Hmm.
stuff like that, and
And they
you
did
kind of
him dirty.
yeah.
He turned into a terrible character.
Right. And so you remember kind of this, that it wasn't the same, but in rewatching it, there's still a ton of funny laugh out loud moments in those last couple of seasons that I think you'd be remiss if you didn't
Hmm.
watch it through past Michael leaving.
Oh yeah, and Jim working it out to make Dwight as the manager his assistant to the assistant regional manager, the arm. That's that's such a good episode. Yeah.
I then have a confession to make to the two of
Oh
Yeah.
you, I
no.
guess. I'm
Uh-oh.
I'm not positive that I've seen every post Michael episode. I don't know that I've ever watched it straight through to the end.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Grace
This
is
is my
sufficient.
thank you. Thank you. It's not just about confession, it's also about repentance. So
That's right.
I will make it a point to
Mm.
watch those. But we are talking specifically about Michael Scott today.
Hmm.
Uh so what are there's so many that we could choose from, I know, but we'll start with Dan. Give me a couple of your favorite Michael Scott moments. Give me no more than two, all right?
I'll give you a favorite one, and then a part when I'm at odds with Michael.
Okay.
Uh,
Mm.
uh, so favorite, I'd say the favorite running line is him versus Toby,
Oh
Mhm.
and
yeah.
probably when Toby comes back and his disbelief, that
Yes.
thinking that that's like a joke, and then just the no, like that
Hmm.
meme. So overarching the Toby versus Michael and his just like absolute hatred of of him and trying to spoil all of his fun and his great ideas, and why do we even need him there? So those interactions I always find funny. My hard part, this is a Office episode, but if I can be honest, lies more in Parks and Rec than it does in The Office. And one of those reasons is the Michael Scott cringe
Mhm.
that I can't take it sometimes. Like I squirm
Mhm.
in my skin. The Scott's
Mhm.
tots of like those moments when it's
The
just
big
like
dividing line.
I
Scott's
was like,
tots.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, I can't take it. Like, not that he's just dumb, but the things that he does is
You kind of want to
insensitive
fight
and
him.
yeah, it's like, oh, I can't take it. So that the love and kind of hate
Mhm.
is that dividing line of when he is, purposefully
Mhm.
so, but this kind of cringe character,
Yeah.
annoying, doesn't read the room character, that
Yeah.
Mhm.
it hurts my heart sometimes being someone that avoids those situations at all cost in my
Oh
life.
yeah. Secondhand embarrassment's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Fun
how
fact:
about
I
you?
actually run Parks and Rec theology too.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that I followed that, but I have
Yeah.
I've noticed that that's out there. We'll have to give it we'll have you back on. I'll call you a
Yeah.
different name then.
According to Ron Swanson.
Yes, there
There
you
you
go.
go.
Yeah.
So Mark, how about you? What are some of your favorite Michael Scott moments?
Oh man, one of my favorites is the cold opening of Willy Wonka when he comes in dressed as Willy Wonka,
Yeah.
and just it's like the little things that just make me laugh really hard, like how he says extraordinary jelly beans and just how he like sings and yells it, and then he does like a backward shuffle to put the like for me it's all the office is all about the little things, the funny quirks that if you're not really paying attention or don't know, then you'll completely miss.
Right.
That one, I love the dinner party. That's one of my favorite
Yes.
episodes.
Dinner party was gonna be one of the ones that I mentioned, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just the whole aspect of it's when he drinks the wine, he goes, "That's an oaky afterbirth." Like it's the little
Yeah.
things that it just make it really really funny. But two heartwarming ones that I really like is when Michael goes to Pam's art show and he looks at her and goes,
Mm,
I'm really proud of you." And
yeah.
then he buys her picture of the office. And then the last one would be when Michael does his Survivor Man trip and puts Jim in charge.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and then he relieves him of Jim of his duties. And he kind of just has a little heart to heart to him of why he makes jokes of that's what she says and why he does all that to keep things light. I think you see some of his like I don't know if true character is the right word, but you see some like heartwarming parts
Yeah.
that balance out the cringe at times.
Yeah, I do think that often that is an understated or underappreciated part of Michael because the cringe is kind of foregrounded so often that
Yeah.
that's what you focus on. But there he really does he has those moments where he is a caring and
Mm-hmm.
genuinely sweet person. I love those as well.
That's what makes him lovable, is that while he's can be a terrible person, have bad interpersonal skills,
Mm-hmm.
it comes around to he's a good boss because he
Mm-hmm.
cares for his employees.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He puts people first. That's, the opening of the show is they're trying to cut somebody. They're
Yeah.
trying to get rid of somebody, and
Classic
can't
Devin.
he can't fathom the idea of
Mm-hmm.
firing an employee. Like they're his family, and
Yeah.
he loves his people, minus Toby. But they're part of his family, and he can't think of
Yeah.
not doing that.
Toby works
Yeah.
for HR, so
Oh yeah,
corporate.
right. So he's
Yes,
not
yes,
part.
yes.
What does he say? He's like he's not really a member
Yeah.
of our family.
Then he goes, and you're divorced, so you're not even part of your family.
Oh yes.
So mean.
Yeah. I was getting ready to say as Dan was talking that Michael Scott's not really mean, he's just lacks self-awareness. And that's
Mhm.
mostly true except for when it comes to Toby, in which
Yeah.
case he's very self-aware and mean.
Yeah.
But I do
Purposeful.
think his like lack of self-awareness is both like his downfall and his saving grace because like I think it creates all of those awkward, cringy moments. But when you see the sweet side of him, you're like, oh, like there is an innocence to all of this that just is who he is. I think the thing that we can't save, any longer, because I can't go anywhere without people stopping me.
Yep.
I'm sure Dan, especially when you're dressed like that,
Yeah.
people just hounding you all the time, and they're
I've
like,
resorted to going online for my office supplies. I can't step foot in a Staples
right.
Yeah.
any longer.
And people are just like, look, you guys say that you're the first and only pop culture and Christian podcast, but you haven't even talked about The Office, one of the biggest
Mhm.
pop culture shows that are out there. So we brought in you for our help. What is the gospel according to Michael Scott?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I was talking to my wife. I'm like, man, how do I, like, which instance do I pick? So I actually thought about like Michael's character development over just the whole series, or I
Mhm.
guess I should say until end of season 7. And it's kind of like it felt easier to pick things that it's easy to fall prey into rather than things that are good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Michael to me is like a cautionary tale
Yes. Yes.
at a lot of the times. But as I referenced earlier, my theory on why Michael blows up so many situations and creates so many cringe moments and factors is because he's hyper focused on being the center of attention.
Mm.
Like he is hyper focused on people thinking he's funny. He creates fake mandatory overtime just to get Jim and Pam over for a dinner party. Like his entire MO is trying to create relationship and be friends with people and do all this. But the hyper focused of being the center of attention, what I would say is how that pertains to us as Christians is that the reality that we're not the point of this at all. Like the point of following Jesus and being a Christian and the gospel has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with Jesus and the part I get to play in all of that. So the story I contribute to is far more important than the part in the story that you play.
Mm.
And I think there's a heavy emphasis on how big of a deal you are. And that sounds a bit brutal, but I'm just going to go there anyways. I'm anonymous. That's why I'm anonymous, right? But there's a heavy emphasis on how big of a deal like you are, making sure you know you're a big deal. But that's simply like not true. Like, and I would argue that it's not true. To be clear, what I'm not saying is I'm not saying you don't matter, because we all matter because of the Imago Dei, made in the image of God. What I'm saying is that when you surrender your life to Jesus, it's just not a part of you. It's like all of you, including recognition, fame, accolades. Like all that I do is no longer for me to be known, but to make Jesus known. He must increase, I must decrease. And I think even in a social media platform world, it's very easy to be like, I want to be known. I want to receive accolades. And to me, that's a deeper desire of wanting to be known by our creator rather than, but sometimes that can feel intangible. So we reach for tangible ways to find significance. So that's my spiritual deep dive on Michael Scott being hyper focused on being center of attention and how that's actually true for a lot of us. And that's for me as well. And I think it's a good discipline for me to remain anonymous because I know my heart and how wicked it can be as well. Be like, I want to make myself known on this platform so I feel some sort of worth. And that's simply not where it comes from.
Do I need to be liked? No. I like to be liked. I have to be liked.
But not as much as my need to be loved.
Yeah.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
Yeah, and absolutely. That's him, is he can't help but put himself in the middle of everything. And that's why he enjoys being manager, is that he gets that voice, he gets that say, he has that influence in putting himself in it. And you can just see in all the other instances, the Prison Mike episode where
all the meetings he calls. Yeah.
Yes. So all this emphasis is getting put on somebody else, and so then he has to put himself in the middle and tell everybody why prison's not fun.
The worst part about prison was the Dementors.
Ain't no movies in the clink.
Actually, our TV was bigger than this one. I don't know about you, but I think if I'm do an honest assessment of myself. It's like, especially being like a pastor and like preaching and different stuff like that. Like, how do I continue to have that humble heart that God desires? And I think it's easy for me, and I don't, because I don't want to speak for everybody, because I don't know everybody. All I can do is kind of self-assess. Is that I have a deep desire to make myself known on my terms and with my skills and my passions. When the call to a life of following Jesus is it's a cost of your life. It's a cost of my preferences and opinions, and not trying to merge those.
We bring up all the meetings that Michael calls, and he sees the attention drifting from him, and he has to bring it back. And I think uh,
Mm-hmm.
that is very relatable, but also is very counter Christ, right? I think
100%.
we see Jesus, who, one of my favorite passages, Philippians 2. 5 through 11, but who was God, but did not consider equality with God something to be used to
Mm-hmm.
his own advantage, but instead he
Yeah.
emptied himself. And so
Yeah.
Christ has all the power, had and has all the power in the world. But what did he do with that? He emptied himself. He came to
Mm.
serve, not to be served. And so we
Yeah.
are to follow in that way. And, we all have a sphere of influence, whether that is we are pastors of a church, we have an online account, we are whatever, we have coworkers, we have family members who look to us for answers. I think we can be like Michael, maybe a little less cringy, a little more socially savvy than he is,
I
but
hope
where
so.
we want to, me too, where we want attention to be on us. Or we can be like Christ, where we use those positions of influence that we've been put in, and we see how can we use this to the advantage of someone else, rather than
Mm-hmm.
making sure the attention's on me.
That's good. Yeah. Come on now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is kind of on the aspect of he will try his hardest to find friendships and relationships where, like, he goes to improv class, tries to make friends there, but no one wants him there because he has way too many imaginary guns.
What did he whisper to you?
Yeah. Such a good scene. That's a scene where you're like, Michael, I'm gonna beat you up. Like, get out of here. The dinner party, like I referenced, creating that ruse to get Jim and Pam over. And what's interesting is like his crazy pursuit of trying to do that. And then you see some of his heartwarming portions. It's when he gets dumped and he asks everybody to set him up on a date. Remember that? And then he meets Pam's apartment manager and pretends that he's not Michael when he sees her. He just wants like a deep connection. And I think a lot of the times what I've seen, especially pastor in the past 14 years and just in my life as well, people often think transparency and vulnerability are the same thing, but they're not at all. And how the key to like good biblical relationships and good biblical marriage is not just transparency at the beginning, but continued vulnerability of where I'm at. Because transparency says this is where I've been. Vulnerability says this is where I'm at. And it's a lot easier for me to talk about where I've been and how I've messed up and how Jesus saved me, but continually be like, no, this is where I'm at. And this is what I'm still going on behalf to God of praying for freedom and peace and comfort in this specific area at the moment. A lot of times in church, we can feel like, well, too blessed to be stressed. Sometimes I feel blessed and stressed at the same time. Like all these kind of like cliche Christian terms for, well, at least we have our hope in eternity. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we don't bear one another's burdens now together. Right. And I think a lot of times it's easy to be transparent because that feels safer than being vulnerable, because being vulnerable allows someone to be able to hurt you where you're at, opposed to something that you've, quote, healed or moved on from. And so I think how Gospel According to Michael Scott in the area of biblical relationships, it's we can fall into this trap. I'll be transparent, but I won't be vulnerable.
I just saw recently an author, and I remember it was a woman, but I don't remember her name. I apologize. But she tweeted something out that said something like, Moses questioned God, Abraham like argued with God, Elijah whined, Jeremiah like cried out to God, but Jonah ran away. And the point that she was making was that like conflict with God is not a barrier to intimacy. Often it's actually the way to intimacy with God.
Absolutely.
And I think like Jonah, and to tie it into what you were saying about transparency and vulnerability, like he was pretty transparent about what he wanted and what he didn't want to do, but he refused to be vulnerable before God. Whereas I think the rest of those biblical characters named there, they were willing to be vulnerable before God. And that led to a deeper intimacy. Whereas just Jonah being transparent, that led to bitterness between him and God.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. And how much more do we do that with people like in our lives as well? You can't have that authentic like Christian community and relationship apart from someone going first in this relationship, knowing that I may get burned, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, then, are you ready for the Bible breakdown?
Oh boy.
All right. For the office edition of the Bible breakdown, I'm going to give you two an office character, and then you're going to give me their biblical counterpart. All right. Dan, you are the professional on the spotter as the podcaster here. So we're going to make you go first.
Okay.
And since you are impersonating him, we're going to start with Dwight.
Dwight K. Schrute. There's so many aspects of, in all of these seasons we get, especially of the main characters, but I'll zero in on one that we have Dwight as assistant to the regional manager, and at some points assistant regional manager. But what he is looking for is the love and admiration that he has for Michael Scott to be returned at all. He wants to be Michael Scott's right-hand man. He wants that relationship, as we said before about how Michael is looking to be the center of attention. The one person that is constantly giving that to him is Dwight.
Right.
And so I'm going to go Dwight as John, the disciple whom Jesus loved. The only one there at the crucifixion, was there for him, was reclining in the Last Supper, on Jesus. And so that's my Dwight is John.
I was going to say Elisha to Elijah.
Okay.
He's following him around, all this different stuff. And then when Michael leaves, he writes a letter of recommendation saying that he should be the manager now. So it's like the throwing of the cloak on him.
Yes. That's good. We'll go with Ryan Howard. Who is Ryan Howard biblically?
Oh, man. Judas, for sure. Just constantly trying to use everybody for his own gain. That's going to go. Yeah. Sorry, Ryan, did you dirty on that one. But
for what it's worth, he did that to himself. He wrote the character. So
because he was one of the writers. That's funny.
I was thinking the rich young ruler. There's lots of promise, especially early. He's going to night school. There's lots of promise. He shows some aptitude, but then ultimately can't step up to follow through with being the person that he's being called to be, being that manager or district manager or whatever he had.
I changed my answer. I picked that one. That was really good.
That is good. That's good. I like the Judas one because I can imagine someone from The Office like writing the story of The Office, and kind of like John does Judas dirty right from the beginning. Like anytime Judas is mentioned, it's like he's the one who betrayed Jesus. Yeah, this scumbag was stealing money.
Fired guy.
Just every time. Yeah.
Fired guy.
That actually, Dwight as John and Ryan as Judas works perfectly, because Dwight is always, because Michael is always wants like Ryan to think he's cool. And so I like, this is good. This is good. I like this, this fanfic we have going here.
That's right.
All right. How about Meredith? Who is Meredith?
Oh man. I feel nervous answering this one.
She's David dancing naked before.
Oh yeah.
Lord. Casual Friday. Her bit in that is classic.
Be more undignified than this. That's right. When Will Ferrell, D'Angelo Vickers, and Michael show up to her house to give her the Dundee nomination, she's coming home from a one-night stand. The woman caught in the act of adultery.
There you go.
There you go.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Brutal.
for sure. I mean, and you've had 5, previous, and the one you're with now is not
the one at the well.
Yep.
her constant kind of adultery.
Yeah. I even thought maybe like a pre-Jesus Mary Magdalene, like what we don't know much of her story, but it's been filled in by imaginations over the centuries. But I feel like she probably, based on those understandings of her, she probably was similar to Meredith, I think, a little bit.
And then Meredith did like go to school and got like a different job.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And all that stuff.
There is a redemptions angle there. We'll stick with the ladies. How about Angela? Who is Angela?
I think maybe a Pharisee.
That's what I was. That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. So we have the perception that she puts on the face of prim and proper, wanting to follow all the rules. But then we see kind of the whitewashed tombs of it all come crashing down, where there's not the substance behind the portrayal that she's trying to put on of being this good Christian, moral, hardworking person, and then the moral failures, but also some of the other interpersonal too, and unkindness that she can show as well.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely.
All right, last one. How about Stanley? Who is Stanley?
This one's tough.
Does he have a mustache or not? I love that bit.
That's such a good one. And they cover his face when he walks through the door.
Well, because like as it's going on, I was like, "Wait, does he?" Like,
oh yeah,
that's
like the genius of the writing. Yeah.
I'm like,
majority of people are like, "Wait." Oh man, Stanley.
So I've got here's who came to mind for me with Stanley. Was kind of like late stage Moses, where he's like, especially where he like hits the rock when he's supposed to speak to the rock. Like he's kind of just fed up with being stuck with these people. He's like, nobody does anything right. They're never doing what they're supposed to. Like I just need to get out of here. And so I'm just gonna make this thing happen. Let's go.
But then there's Manna Day, and I like Manna Day.
There's Manna Day.
Oh. Perfect. That was perfect.
That's good. That's good.
But on Manna Day, it's worth it.
So that's the Bible breakdown. If you listeners have any that came to your mind of the ones that we mentioned, or even other characters from The Office that you think have a good biblical parallel, be sure to let us know. Reach out to us. We'll probably put it in our stories or something, and you can comment. Let us know. All right, you guys ready for one more game?
Let's have it.
All right. So this is Will It Preach Office Edition. The title is Michael Scott, more like John Stott. And so I'm going to give you a Michael Scott quote, and you have to John Stott it. You have to tell me, will it preach or will it not preach? All right. First one, I'm an early bird and I'm a night owl. So I'm wise and I have worms. Will it preach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could say you could use Paul, I've become everything to everyone, becoming to the Jews, he was like that to the Gentiles, he was like that to the owls, the morning birds, or the night owls, as a Christian or a pastor, of relating with people where they are at, to bring them closer to Christ and closer to understanding the gospel.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I think it'll preach for sure. The life of Solomon, he had all the wisdom in the world, and he knew all the right things and but his life still ended poorly.
With worms.
Yeah.
With worms. Yeah.
He had worms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
I got worms.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to call it. We got worms.
That's what I'm going to call it. No, that's good. Solomon is good. I think I like that answer. I was thinking Paul in also in Philippians 3, where he talks about he kind of like lays out his resume.
Yeah.
But he's like, not that I have attained it already, but I strive for it. So
Hmm.
he's kind of saying I'm wise, but I still got worms. But I think
Yeah. Born in my
Solomon,
flesh.
yeah,
Yeah.
Solomon plays that, I think, a little bit clearer. So I like that. All right, it'll preach. We gave you some options, Old and New Testament. Round 2, and I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do. Will it preach?
I think that can go into the vulnerable idea that we were talking about before.
Mm,
That as
Hmm.
Christians, we know the truth, we know the good news of Jesus Christ, we know the promises of Christ that are laid out in the Bible for us,
Hmm.
that are ahead of us. But when the rubber meets the road, when things go wrong in our life and we don't know what to do sometimes, and
yeah.
being
Hmm.
able to have that balance, that tension of knowing that we serve a good God, knowing that we're his beloved, that we're the church, that we're called to
Hmm.
something more, but being vulnerable to be able to say, yeah, but I need help, I don't know what to do
Hmm.
right now.
Yes, I would preach out of Romans 7 on that one. I know
Hmm.
what to do, but I know that I can know what I ought to do, but I don't do it.
Hmm.
It's a whole dialogue that, or I guess monologue that Paul is having of knows what the right answer is, kind of what you were saying, and I know what I ought to do, but I don't do it. And then he kind of ends, "Oh, what a miserable person I am."
Mm,
Kind of this
hmm.
whole idea of that, and kind of
I
even
have
going off
worms.
what yeah, I have worms. Yeah, even his resume in Philippians 3, like,
Hmm.
yeah. So I'd go probably a Romans 7 route.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, round 3. Society teaches us that having feelings and crying is bad and wrong. Well, that's baloney because grief isn't wrong. There's such a thing as good grief. Just ask Charlie Brown. Will it preach?
Man, I'm trying to think of.
I mean, as far as the emotions go, we've been looking at my church the motions that Christ goes through, him
Mm,
being fully man and fully God, that he experienced grief, he
Hmm.
experienced betrayal, he experienced love and hurt and these range of emotions, so that in sometimes, instead of society telling us to just repress those things, or even Christian culture sometimes saying to not have that, all of those emotions, that, oh, that to be mad is bad, or to be angry is bad,
Hmm.
but the Bible says in your anger do not sin. So there's a
Hmm.
sense that you can be angry but not fall into sin, or not fall into that temptation. And so just
Hmm.
maybe preaching about grief specifically, on how to work through that grief, that there still is joy in Christ, but we can experience the grief of a present moment, or even expand that to all emotions, and how they can be negative, they can lead us down into sin, but they're also a part of life and how we can biblically experience them.
yeah, I think that's good. I think what we talked about, the too blessed to be stressed earlier. Like there
Hmm.
is kind of an understanding in Christianity that we have to be happy, but I think there's a rich tradition within Christianity and a rich tradition within our scripture uh, of not always being happy. You go through some of the darker Psalms. You can go through
Hmm.
the entire book of Lamentations, where you are lamenting. So I think we got some angles here.
Oh yeah.
All right, last one, and this quote was actually it was quoted earlier. Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. Will it preach?
Oh yeah.
Where are you going with this one?
I posted this as a meme before, is that this is the mentality of every camp counselor, that they
Oh
both
yeah, I
want
saw
to
that one.
be immensely loved, but feared, so that if they turn that on of go to sleep or listen to me, they want that fear to be in them, but they want to be held to high esteem, to be praised, to be loved in that way. Or
Hmm.
maybe even all youth pastors or youth leaders want to
Right.
have that balance that Michael Scott's talking about.
Hmm. And all the youth pastors said amen.
Amen. Right.
Jeez. Oh man, I would preach that. Man, that's tough. Because I just think of the beginning of Proverbs, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the
Mhm.
Lord.
Yeah.
So I'd go that way, that the beginning, true depth and love of Jesus starts with the fear in the sense of just an awe of how big God really is. And this is interesting, kind of goes into a conversation I was having like over DMs with someone. They were just giving me a long list of stuff.
Mhm.
Or like, I don't think God is really like this, and I don't think God is like that. Oh, I just remembered. It was a guy trying to tell me that Paul ruined Christ's message because he was establishing male patriarchy and all that stuff.
Mm. Mm.
And so there's zero, if I did not get a sense of that, he had a reverence for God, aka a fear of the Lord, and how big he really is, and how small he actually is in the grand scheme of things.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think you could, even no matter how you parse out the actual theological issues, I think that this quote could be used for like a series of like the God of the Old Testament and Jesus, and like, because I
Mm.
think people often feel like they're pitted against one another, and there's plenty of different ways to like kind of shake that out depending on your theological tradition. But I don't think it matters where you land. I think you can use this
Mm-hmm.
quote to get people interested in a series looking at that. Well, great.
Absolutely.
That's Will It Preach Office Edition. Well done. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, people can follow at Office Theology. That's the handle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
then
sir.
the Parks and Rec one, we can send people there too. That's at
Yeah.
what Parks? You tell
Parks
me.
and Rec Theology. Yep.
Okay,
At Parks and Rec Theology.
easy peasy. Sweet. Well, make
Mm-hmm.
sure you're following great content going over there. It's blowing up. So be one of the first 50,000 people, and you got to get in under the wire. Head over now.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for joining us. All of you listeners as well for the Gospel According to. Remember to follow us on social media as well, all the platforms that exist or have ever existed: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, officially on Threads now, YouTube, all of those at TGAT Podcast. Thanks for
Dunder
sharing.
Mifflin Infinity. You can follow.
Yes. Thank you for sharing the gospel according to with your family, friends, and even your HR rep.
That's right. You can send us a mailbag question on social media or at tgatpod@gmail.com. Or if you want to send us on a written piece of Dunder Mifflin paper, you can send that in as well. And do your part in obeying the Great Commission by helping us spread the gospel. According to podcast, one great way of doing that is leaving a 5-star rating review. Listen, guys, it's free. We're not asking you to send us $5 here. We're not starting a Patreon at this point. Just go. It's free. Do it in app. Give us a 5-star rating review.
Takes less time than a walk to the annex.
There you go. And you can leave the review, and we will read it right here. So even if you want to leave us a 5-star review and tell Dave why he's wrong, we'll read it. So you can air your grievances here. You can tell everyone about how Dave put your all of your stuff in the vending machine and gave you a bag of nickels to do that. But leave the review. We'll read it here on your favorite Hump Day podcast. This was the Gospel According to The Office.
I was a big disc guy.
I was a big DVD guy. Dude, season 1 is, to me, season 1's harder than After Michael Leaves.
Yeah,
For me
actually,
personally. My
yeah.
bone to pick with Parks and Rec is this. They started off with the same feel as The Office, like there's a TV crew. And
Yeah.
then slowly they faded out that, and there's no longer acknowledgement that there's a TV
Right.
crew there.
Yeah,
And
then
so
it just becomes a TV show. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always think about that. This is what I think about when I lay awake at night. Just keeps me up.
That's funny.
Michael to me is like a cautionary tale. So the story I contribute to is far more important than the part in the story that you play. That's so good. I may have to make that a meme now, and I'll give you credit.
All right, go for it.